Welcome back, everyone, to the Kitchen and the Forging Agreement podcast. My name is Lisa, and sitting across from me is my dear friend and colleague, John Worthington. So, in our last episode, we discussed due function. So today we're going to continue with specific function. But before we begin, just remember, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you stay up to date with all our latest videos. All right, let's jump in here.
Okay.
So where I want to open the discussion today is with the idea that the quadrant of specific function is considered a geography. What does that mean?
Well, okay. To begin with, you have to think about all four quadrants of the playing field as a geography.
Okay.
Okay. The playing field is where everything takes place. It kind of defines another layer, if you will, of what it is this particular set is about. To begin with, we have B1, harmony, and do. Okay, and those three things form a triangle. And so the B1 part of the triangle is located somewhere in the geography of specific function. Let's see if I can give you some places to think about that so that it's not quite so confusing. Let's think about just a regular landscape or geography, if you will. If you live on top of the mountain, you have a different kind of lifestyle than if you live by the river, okay? Or if you live on the plain, or if you live in the valley. Each one of those different locations have different lifestyles simply because of how they are, because of how they exist in the geography.
Yeah, right.
And so let's assume then that what we do is we place that one individual, that being one individual, somewhere in that kind of a geography, okay? Okay. Now, how do we determine what that geography will be? Well, probably because of the experiences that one individual has had.
Okay.
But you have to think about this kind of funny a little bit because it doesn't correspond exactly to a geography, yet it does. For instance, if somebody lives in town or in a little town as opposed to in the city, they're going to have different attitudes and different ideas and so forth than if they live out in the country someplace. Okay. And so being at one while you're in a pueblo or in a little town, or if you're in a city, is quite a bit different than being one if you're out in the country. Okay. There are just different ideas.
Right. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. Grew up in a small town, lived in the big city, and just those two experiences are vastly different.
Exactly. Okay, now, we could also think about it from this perspective. Let's say that one person is a musician.
Okay.
If that musician lives out in the country, the chances are that he's not going to be playing jazz.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
If he lives in a small town, he probably isn't going to be playing jazz. He's probably not going to be playing just country music. He may be playing folk music, for instance. Okay.
Yep.
But if he lives in town, he could play any of the above. If he lives in the city, okay, he could play jazz, he could play gospel, he could play all kinds of different musics. Okay. And so how one expresses is influenced by the geography in which one lives, okay? So to begin with, we have a B1 that's being located in a geography of a specific function. Okay, now the thing is that this whole idea is an expression of the spirit, not an expression of the body.
True. So, on that note, how do you know, which is which then? How do you tell the difference?
Well, that's exactly how you tell the difference. Everything about specific function is related to and charged by noting and paying attention to differences.
Right, because that is the tool then, right? Seeing differences.
Right. But let's kind of look at differences not being something that's different, but let's stop and think about what a difference could be thought of as, or how we could think about a difference. Let's say that somebody's talking about math. If I have a number and I subtract a number, what am I left with?
A difference.
With a difference.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, so in this individual who is being at 1, we have a concept of saying he's a musician. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that musician part is not a spiritual event. It's something that person has learned by 20,000 hours of practice, perhaps, or more.
Okay.
Okay. However, why does he play that kind of music, or why does he take that particular part of music to be his business?
So that would be the spirit expressing.
Well, let's take a look at that. The spirit generally expresses in 2 different ways, either as an individual being a dreamer or a stalker. Okay. Now those are Castaneda's terms.
Mm-hmm.
They fit, although they're somewhat misleading at the same time. But they're accurate. Okay, they're not, even though they may be misleading, they're accurate statements. Because an artist, for instance, is going to be able to see what it is that they're drawing. They're going to see it in their mind. They're going to dream it, in other words, and then they're going to be able to draw that. That's why we call it hand-eye coordination, because that person can dream what he wants his body to do, and he does that. Now, a stalker may do the same thing, but a stalker is going to approach it differently. The stalker is going to approach it as being in control of the world around him to get that done. So a stalker who is an artist who has that hand-eye coordination may take that to let's say an ad agency and become a account manager, let's say. Now, a dreamer might be able to do the same thing, but a lot of it will depend on what kind of influences that dreamer or stalker has had in his real-time geography of life.
Okay, so like the environment they grew up in, the geography they grew up in, what they believe is real.
Right.
I mean, that would all then have an influence on how they're an artist.
Exactly. Okay, now the same thing is true in terms of how the spirit expresses the dreamer or stalker concept, because it depends on where it lands in the geography of specific function. What are the differences that individual brings to the table? What makes that individual different than the other individuals in the same field or having the same type of specific function?
Right. So then going with the artist idea, even if they both do illustration,
right?
How they do that, how that expresses is going to be different. It's like everybody is unique in that way then.
Right. Well, let's say it's in how they approach that expression.
Okay. Fair.
Okay. This is a silly example, but what's the difference between, let's say, let's say Monet or Picasso and Pollock?
Vastly different. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we could certainly see that Monet and Picasso are dreamers, because what they see and how they express it may be different. Although there's an argument that could be made that Picasso would really have been a stalker, because he uses these images where he breaks it all apart. It's a very logical construct in lots of ways. Although he could also draw a bull with a single line. Okay.
So maybe somewhere in between, like
in other words, his configuration may be a little bit of both, which is often the case. It's not one or the other, but it's the two parts of the two ends of the concept. Okay, the same human being. And so where does he express from? He picks a place up and down that stick of one end or the other, and he expresses from there. And maybe it's a wide area on the stick. Whereas Monet picks a particular thing and he says, I just want to, just the impression is all that you need to get. Okay. And whereas Pollock is saying, well, in somewhere in all this, there's actual design. And, idiots like me look at it and say, sure there is. It must be in there someplace because people are paying you a lot of money for that stuff, but I can't see it. It's
far abstract side.
Well, it's an abstract idea. Yeah. That's a fact. Okay. Yeah. But there would be an example of those kinds of things. Let's take it over to music, for instance. You could say that for instance, let's say pentatonics, it's like whoever designs those songs for them seems to be somewhat of a stalker because they are exact. I mean, there's no movement on it, but they're interpreted by people who dream sound.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. I mean, I never thought about it like that. That's
Okay.
Yeah.
Think about Ed Sheeran and how he puts together his lyrics. Okay, they're poetically dreamy, often. Okay.
And the man can sing anything in that particular way.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Whereas you take somebody like AC/DC, and it's like there's not much dreaming going on there. It's pretty cut and dry, right? Or if you listen to bluegrass players, okay. They have to be so exact with the notes because there's only so much space, and they've got to fit everything that they're going to do within that space. And it's a very short space. It's not long at all. They got to do that whole run that they're going to do in that space. That has that's kind of a stalking kind of idea. Although you hear somebody like Doc Watson play that stuff, and you say, well, that guy's not stalking. He's dreaming. Or even David Grissman, you listen to what he's doing, and it's like he's dreaming about that. It's jazz.
Right, because it's interesting because there's a flow to it, and it's
right. Okay, so you can observe that in lots and lots and lots of places. Okay, now not everybody who's an artist or who expresses does those things. Some people miss it completely. They don't understand that the spirit is what directs them from the beginning. They think that it's all their own effort, and it may actually be. I wouldn't say that it isn't, but it appears as though that they have settled on the side of saying it's just a bodily experience. Okay. You see that in some politicians, for instance, where they're just talking about they don't give a damn about the people, really. They give a damn about their own career. Mr. DeSantis perhaps could fall in that category.
Yes, I would think so.
Where he doesn't care about his people, he cares about whether or not he presents himself as the champion of the people.
Right, like how he looks.
Yes, about his own. Concepts of who he should or should not be thought of, or as he should be thought of, perhaps. But that doesn't mean he's a bad guy. He's really a good guy. None of that stuff is going on. But his expression, it seems to be rather self-centered. Okay.
Right. So then, like, I guess that's what you're saying, though, is there's like a denial. Or not even an awareness of that spirit aspect of their specific function.
Right. Okay, there's a couple of three of those things that are going on these days, okay? I saw an interview this morning. I don't know. I think it was on CNN, perhaps, where the reporter was interviewing this lady who was an anti-vaxxer, and she was talking about how do we know that a reality is a reality. Well, I don't know. How do we know?
Walk out in front of a bus, you're gonna find out really quick.
But her point was, she said, well, how do I know that somebody is telling me the truth? How do I know that that they don't have an agenda? Okay.
Interesting.
The question is, how would you know that they don't? Or how do you know that they do? Okay.
Yep.
I mean, that also has to be entered into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you can tell whether somebody has an agenda because of whether or not they're following a bullet point agenda, like that lady did.
Well, and DeSantis is, he's doing the same thing then.
Well,
Yeah.
well, sort of he is, but he's making it up as he goes along, most assuredly.
Yeah.
And he's listening to which way the political winds are blowing,
Mm-hmm.
and he's looking for Mr. Trump's base. Well, I don't know that there's really that much of a base there. And I think it's dwindling away because not all those people are stupid.
No.
Okay. I think that a lot of those Trump people I think they were conned, and I think that they are kind of embarrassed that they were conned, and they don't want to admit that they were conned, but they were, and they know that they were.
Yeah.
I mean, people who die from COVID, and there's been a lot of people that on the anti-vaxxers and so forth that try to make political statements by saying, I'm not going to get vaccinated, and they're dead from COVID. Well, that's a shame. Really and truly, we've lost a brilliant mind because that brilliant mind didn't pay attention that it was spirit.
Right.
Okay, that doesn't mean that they're bad people. It means that they didn't have a way of seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is what we're trying to do here, is to give people a measuring stick to see where the spirit exists. Okay,
Yeah.
and a measuring stick to see how to take advantage of that existence.
Mm.
Okay, so
Yes.
if we can stop and say, okay, the spirit expresses in a specific function as, let's say, a dreamer or a stalker, and just leave it at that. Okay, just that's all the further we have to go. The spirit
Mm-hmm.
sets that up. That's a supra-self meta program.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in other words, if I thought about that in terms of an Apple or computer, my Apple computer is an Apple computer. Okay, it was made to do graphics. Okay,
Right. The huge in the art world.
that's right.
Yeah.
My IBM computer was made to do calculations.
Yep.
That's the reason why it's an
Business
IBM.
world.
It's a business world.
Yeah.
A Linux computer was made so it could talk to computers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now they all have different functions. They all have different origins. Let's say. So
Right.
the supra self meta program for any one of those three computers is quite a bit different.
Yes.
Okay. In other words, the operating system for those three computers has to be different than the other ones. And they are different because they have a different function.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean they can't communicate or anything. We figure out a way to do translations even in computers.
Mm-hmm.
But that gives you an idea about what a supra self meta program would be in terms of a specific function.
Right. As a great example, just because you take an Apple and you we'll just do apples and PCs side by side. They both can run the same programs, but the way they look and the way they function on either computer are slightly different.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, and because the Apple computer is really designed for graphics, it was designed for the art world. Okay,
Mhm.
okay, so that's the IBM was designed for the business world.
Yeah.
They're both good computers. They both can.
Yeah, they're awesome.
They can both do the jobs the other one does.
Mhm.
Okay. However, like you said, you'll find a lot more Apples in artsy, craftsy things than you will IBMs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you'll find a lot of IBMs where it's mostly business. Okay, because why would you have an Apple computer with the graphics, all the graphic capabilities when you're trying to count money and crunch numbers and so forth?
Yep. You work in an advertising agency or marketing agency, you get an Apple computer. That's what they use.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So that's the supra self meta program. That's the spirit of that program, or that computer, if you will.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So the self meta programs of that computer, the operating system of that computer, is designed for what that computer is going to do, what its specific function is.
Yes.
Okay, we know that the specific function of the spirit of that computer is art or business, let's say. Okay, dreaming or stalking, as an example.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what we could say about that then is we could say that the operating system of those computers are going to be somewhat different, therefore. Okay, in other words, what they're aimed at and what they're designed for, what the operating system is designed for, is going to be somewhat different due to the origins of those programs.
Yes.
Okay, so when I first got a Mac, the main thing on the Mac was all these little lines that you could adjust. You know, that had handles on them, and you could move them around, and you can make them do all kinds of things. You put a line down, and you put a couple of movements on it, and it had handles. You can move it around, stretch it, and do all kinds of stuff with it. I'll be damned if you could do that on IBM. IBM, you put something like that on there, and it said, there are straight lines, and there are circles. That's what there is. There are arches, and there's a French curve, but it has to be no. Now, eventually, IBM put some handles on it, and they did some other things, and it was cool. But at the beginning, the original operating system of an Apple or a Mac was designed for those art ideas. Okay. The graphics of the idea, and the original operating system of an IBM was designed to do calculations. Yeah. Okay, so as the meta programs were written, therefore, okay, the programs that control sets of programs. In the Apple, there were art programs that were written, or graphics programs that were written. Even communication programs that were written had to be able to handle the size of those graphics that the IBM, the Apple or Mac was designed to manage. Yep. Yeah. The IBM had to do the same thing, but because of the size of the documents it had to manage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the meta programs were therefore different in each one of them, okay? Even though they accomplished the same damn thing, okay? But they were different in the event because of how the original operating system was set up and written, okay? Now, when it came down to the applications, there are Mac applications that you don't really want to put on an IBM.
Yeah,
you can't.
And don't cross-pollinate.
And there are IBM apps that you don't even want near your Apple, your Mac. Okay? You just don't want it there because they, like you said, they don't go together. Some of them have an advantage over here, and some of them have an advantage over there. Neither one of them is perfect. They both got flaws. Okay, they're damn near human in that regard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
However, what they do is different. In other words, their specific function is therefore going to be tailored to how each of those computers exist and what they do in the world. Okay. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean you can't get an Apple to do business stuff. You can. Okay. but it doesn't do it as well as an IBM does it.
Right. So you put QuickBooks on a Mac, you lose a lot of functionality.
You certainly do.
It does not work the same.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. However, if you take an art program and you put it on an IBM, you're going to lose some of the same functionality, because it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to get those fine lines. You're not going to be able to blow it up and take it down and put the layers. I mean, you can do all those things on both of those computers, but the Mac is more convenient because its heritage, or it was designed from the beginning to be able to have that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, here's the thing. In terms of a life or a human computer, I'm 74, and in my lifetime, all of those programs were written for both of those computers.
Yes. Yes. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, there weren't any programs written, or if they were they were really rudimentary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were more like,
yeah, the little punch card thingy. Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. They weren't really programs. They were mechanical devices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I grew up with a rotary phone. I mean, the touch tone phone was like a real novel thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And it's like when I was in my 20s is when AT&T began to have computers that were actually managing phone networks.
Yeah, yeah. That was like Ma Bell or something back then.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or Baby Bell, or the Baby Bells, and so forth. Right. Southern Bell and Northern Bell, and all the bells.
All the bells.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Our programming actually follows those same kinds of lines. If you stop and you say, okay, there's one type of program that's stalking, and there's another type of program that's dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Apple programs tend to be dreamy. Yep. Business program, IBM programs tend to be stalky.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's cool.
Okay. So depending on what you're going to do, or where that computer is going to live in the geography of computer world, is going to determine what it does, mm-hmm. and how well it does it.
Right. Because if you think of that B1, it's going to be situated in a different geography within that specific function.
Well, one would hope. Okay, because here's the thing. Let's take a Mac computer. For it to be one with itself, and for it to actually express its oneness, it needs to be in an art environment.
Okay. Yeah, it does.
Okay. In other words, it needs to live it needs to live in a geography which allows it to express its artfulness, if you will.
Yes.
Whereas that IBM computer will want to live in a geography which allows it to express its business, mm-hmm. Computing capacity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's business fullness, if you will.
That's a mouthful. Business fullness.
Mm-hmm.
I like
so that's an example of how it is that a specific function operates. Now, how you see that, really, which computer do you put where, is the difference between one computer and the other.
Right. Right.
When I take my Apple and I say, okay, if I'm not going to use the graphics, if I subtract the graphics out of my Apple computer, mm-hmm. I'm going to see what? I'm going to see business things not doing very well. I'm now not in the right place.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Somebody put this Apple computer in a place that it shouldn't be. Now, if I have an IBM computer and I bring it over here to an art studio, or to a let's say an advertising agency. Yeah, no. Unless I'm going to do the books, I'm not that was the wrong computer.
Accounting, maybe.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yeah, it can stay over there in the back room all by itself, away from the other computers.
Back away. Stay
Mhm.
away. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's exactly the same thing that happens with us as humans.
Okay.
Okay? Because that analogy is exactly the same analogy that we have to apply to the concept of specific function. Because the spirit's going to express, in other words, our start point is going to be either as a dreamer or as a stalker. And we're going to augment that dreaming and stalking, or we're not going to augment it. We're going to take advantage of it, or we're going to have to wrestle against it.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's, I remember, I don't know if it was one of our conversations or it was in the book, fighting against your specific function uses so much more energy. It's not energy efficient.
Exactly. Here, let's take a look at it. Every business is populated, any one of those office farms, those cubicle farms. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Any one of those is populated with a number of MBAs.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. They're nice people. Misguided as hell, but they're nice people usually. Okay. Because what they are is they're IBM's computers or Apple computers in an IBM environment.
Yep. Yeah, which makes it, it's like it can't function the way it needs to.
Right. Okay. And so they don't know how to fit really, because they're not really paying attention to being a dreamer or a stalker as the spirit expresses through them. They're paying attention to the money that they're going to make because they have this great job.
Right. So it's like, and I would talk to people like working, when I worked in the float centers and stuff, and especially the young people come in and, they're going to college, but they're like just hating it, or they're working at the family business, or, another one is like mom and dad insisted they go to medical school and they are just frustrated and burnout, and
they don't like doing it because that's not what they wanted to do.
Yep.
That's not what they were being driven to do.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think that is a huge contributing factor to the I quit crowd that's going on.
Yes.
The number of people who are just saying, I'm not going to do this.
Yes.
Life's too short. I'm not enjoying myself. I don't want to do this anymore. I may have to, but don't make me, please.
Right. Because, so many people during the pandemic, myself included, worked from home.
Right.
And you started seeing like, wait a minute, I can go throw a load of washing. I can, like moms that had little kids at home, they could be with their kids. They could just go from one thing to the next and still get work done.
Right.
And it's like their life wasn't separated into work,
right,
or be with my family. Right. And, they got to see like where, like, what, this isn't what I want to do with my life. I want this balance in my life.
Right. One of the attractions of being a farmer is that you're always working from home.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Okay. You set your own hours. I mean, you usually set your hours, and the hours are long because you work until you're done with whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. The work's hard because it's moving dirt. Dirt's heavy.
I've heard that.
Yeah. And but you're working from home. you can stop this and go do that and come back and do this again. And so, that's what farmers do. They're making hay, but they have to stop and milk the cows. And then tomorrow then they go feed the chickens, and then they go home and eat dinner, and they come back and do something else.
Right.
They fix a machine or something, and then in the morning they get up and they milk the cows, and then they go out and they do make hay some more. It's all, but they decide what they do, and it's all from home.
Yep.
Okay, so it's rather unnatural for us to have to go to work someplace.
Yes.
Okay? And so
Yes.
we kind of end up fighting against ourselves because we can't really express that spiritual part of ourselves of being at home. Okay?
Wow.
We have a specific function of raising children, of being in a family, and we're forcing our people not to be there, to be somewhere else. And so a lot of people are saying, no, I don't want to do that.
Yep. They got that opportunity to have that experience, and then they got to see the difference between the two.
Yes. And they said, oh, you know what? I did exactly the same amount of work when I was at home than I did when I was at the damned office.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I probably did more when I was at home because I wasn't hanging out saying, I'm at the frickin' office having to listen to this jerk.
Or sitting in rush hour traffic for an hour and a half just trying to get home, or get some work both ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So employers that don't understand that, I think, are probably missing the boat.
Big time.
Right.
Yep.
It may have to be a hybrid type of idea, but a hybrid idea is way better for somebody than that's got to be my way or the highway kind of idea.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't going to ever work.
Right. Because I know people who wanted to go back to the office. Mm-hmm. They actually enjoyed, going in.
Yes.
And I know the company my daughter was working for, that's what, they eventually, it's like, yeah, you want to stay home? Great. If you need to come into the office for something, it's going to be open.
Right.
But yeah, they had that like hybrid idea, and because they found it worked really well. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's the strange part about it. That's actually a spiritual idea. See, this is what I talk about often is that, the expression of the Spirit is a practical idea. It's practical. It's not woo, 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 woo.
Right. And that's a perfect example.
Yes, it is.
Perfect example.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's like that bothers me that people who are supposed to understand about the Spirit, like preachers and priests and I don't know, that psychologist or psychiatrist or whomever it is that's supposed to understand these things. They don't understand that it's necessary for people to express the Spirit. That's a practical thing.
Yeah, they're missing an opportunity to be that.
Well, I don't think they're missing an opportunity. I don't think that they really understand what they're talking about. I think that they're trying to follow a bunch of rules about something that doesn't have rules.
Yep. Yeah, I can see that with experiences I've had, with the church and stuff and years ago. They don't. They have these rules, and that's what they go by. And if you don't fit into those rules, then
right. And so people get confused. People think that the church and the rules have to be the same thing, and they don't.
Not,
that is because the church is missing it. Okay, just flat out. The church, it's a long, slow evolution of goofiness that got us all to there. But there it is. Mm-hmm. Okay, now it's neither here nor there. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's a thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's no different than the divide between the Democrats and the Republicans, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same example.
The division is just absolutely silly, and it's based on some kind of self-importance or another. Okay. I'm more important, and my desires are more important than your desires. Well, that doesn't make any sense, and that has never worked in history, so I don't see where it's going to work now either. No. It won't. It just won't.
No.
Because it's not practical. Okay, and because of that, it's not a spiritual concept. Okay, it has to be a self-centered or self-aggrandizement type of concept of some variety of some kind of power. I'm more powerful than thou art kind of thing, and it's pure silliness when you get down to it, because if you're expressing dreaming or stalking, you don't have room in either of those concepts to express.
Yeah, there's no room for that anywhere.
Well,
it doesn't belong, actually.
Well, it might belong. I mean, it's fun. You know,
okay.
Gorillas do that. Gorillas beat their chest. But they do it as a communication device, not to tell everybody how important they are.
Well, yeah, I'm not so sure.
They're saying, I'm a pretty big gorilla. You really want to come have some of this? And a lot of those guys that are beating their chest aren't big gorillas.
No. And I don't think, well, it's a communication, I suppose, but I don't think.
Well, it could be just little monkeys. I don't know. I'm not making any judgment here. It's a possibility. It's like the lady said about her vaccination. I don't know that there's proof one way or the other, and so it's whose reality are we talking about here? Not that one, certainly, right? So the question here then for me becomes, okay, if that's a practical idea that we're Macs or IBMs as an analogy, not as an exact thing for you dummies that can't figure out the difference.
Yes, we don't have Apple logos on the backs of our heads or anything.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. If that's a reality that we're dreamers or stalkers, if we could assume that to be true for just a moment as a catalytic concept, not necessarily true, but if you use that, you can see some other things, perhaps. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Then you look at the idea of, okay, I have a specific function, a geography. And I'm going to take myself as a single individual, and I'm going to place myself in that geography someplace where it's most beneficial for me to express that dreaming, stalking idea as I see it. Okay, as my experiences have guided me to see, because in the real geography of my specific functions, there are all these experiences which I've actually had. Okay, I grew up on a farm. I grew up in a small town, in a small population. Damn, I didn't know there was an outside world until I was about 25. I mean,
I can relate.
Damn, there's a big old city here. There's people everywhere. Look at that. It wasn't really that bad, but close. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that lifestyle, but it affected how I thought. It still affects how I think. It affects in ways I'm even aware of. I never was aware of them, of how it affected me, but I know that it does. Yeah. Okay. The same with people I see that grew up in the city, that it affected them.
Right, because the environment's so different.
Okay, and so their specific function that they do, the thing that they actually do in their life, has been affected by the geography of their specific where their specific function resided. Right. Okay. Yeah. Did you learn what to do from your family? Did you learn what to do from different jobs? Did you learn what you do from family and different jobs? Did you fight both of them? Did you like both of them? Did you go to college? Did you go to trade school? What did you do, really? All those different ideas are different. We could refer to as different geographies. Now, they actually affect what it is that I do.
Yes. And to go back to that, like, artist idea, an artist growing up in a small community, and all those experiences, and you take an artist who grew up in the big city, let's say New York City, or in another country, like they're going to express that differently. And that's the beauty of it.
That's right. Different musicians,
Yeah.
different musicians sound different because they of the geography in which they grew their musical experiences.
Yeah, and and that's as like we've been discussing this, and I've been thinking about specific function too. It's just like because of all of our experiences and how we express that specific function. What was like I don't know, like that light bulb went off. It's like we all have value because of that.
Yes, we do.
And I know, speaking for myself, it's been a long road to get to see that value.
Well, I think it's true for almost a lot. Well, not for almost everybody, but
Yeah,
for
but for a lot of people,
a lot of people
Yeah.
have difficulty with that concept. They do. Okay, some people just don't ever give a damn from the beginning. Okay.
Yeah, right. We all have people like that.
And but some people have to struggle a lot to see their value. That's true.
Yeah.
But it's because of they can't see whether they're dreamers or stalkers,
Right.
whether they're Macintoshes or
Yes,
IBMs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So what else you got notes? So what else are you asking here?
Wow, I think we covered a lot of it. Let me see here. I think we actually covered a lot of it, and that idea of, and we've been talking about this, but like deciphering what you do versus what you may have, been told, or all of that, and like trying to fit in somewhere where you just don't.
Right. Yeah. If you're a round peg, stay away from square holes. It's not going to work right. Okay. It just isn't going to.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, and I don't know. I think really when you start to consider this, these ideas, and consider specific function, and you start to see how each of us are different yet unique. I think it opens the door then we really can see the beauty in each other.
One should be able to, yes. I don't know whether that we can all the time, but we should be able to. That's the concept.
Well, and I think that's something to, like strive for.
Right.
Because, God, we could certainly use a lot more of that in the world.
Okay. Here, I don't like the strive for concept myself.
All right. Okay. So what do you?
Okay. Yeah. I prefer to think about it as that. Seeing that difference and seeing those origins is a very practical concept.
Yes.
It's a practical way of me looking at who and what I can be, and as opposed to who and what I think I should be, as opposed to who and what I actually am. Mm-hmm. Where am I now? Where could I be? What am I here because of something somebody said back here, because of the geography of my experiences? Mm-hmm. Or am I here because I've decided to do something? If I've decided to do it, what did I base that decision on? Mm-hmm. Where I started from, or because somebody told me I should somewhere or the other? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like mom or dad or Aunt Susie or somebody said,
yeah, you should always do this thing. I don't care whatever else they say. You better do it like this, or I'm gonna kick your ass.
Aunt Susie was a toughie.
I can tell.
Yeah. She wore combat boots for a reason.
It's great. But yeah, I mean that is the thing too, because like again, it's like for me looking back over my life and seeing how, because of certain experiences, one was like what a teacher said to me, and instead of, as far as like expressing artist and drawing, I went off in a different direction. Mm-hmm. Because of that one thing. Mm-hmm. I'm still still like, and you have that creative part with color and design and all of that, but it has
It's evolved
changed.
into something else.
Right.
Well, you may have not been a Monet after all, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a possibility.
Possibility, yes. But yeah. I mean, I think it's just, and like with my daughter, she's a wonderful illustrator, but I saw that in her when she was 2 years old, and nurtured that along the way,
Mm-hmm.
and like gave her that space to play and explore.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's, I don't know, guys, this is awesome stuff. And ask questions, think about it, because we got a lot more to come. So catch up.
So the interesting part about this is that for somebody to communicate information, one really has to understand what one's specific function is and how it is that one is at one with oneself within that specific function.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. In other words, let's go back in time for a second here. For longer than a second. Let's go back a few hundred years, thousands of years, maybe.
There we go.
Once upon a time, there were tribes, okay? And the tribes were a relatively small workforce, okay?
True, yeah.
Now, those tribes, some of them settled down and became small little villages and so forth. And still there was just, there weren't a whole lot of job opportunities, okay? In other words, you either did something that everybody needed or you didn't. Okay.
Right.
Okay. For instance, the guy who could nap arrowheads. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You've been to Huachimontones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was a small civilization, really. But it was still extensive. But they had a workshop that was excavated a few years back that was a obsidian workshop, and there were obsidian shards everywhere on that level when they dug down to that level and they cleaned it out. I mean, you couldn't walk across there barefoot.
Wow.
Your feet would be shreds, because obsidian is sharper than a surgeon's blade. It's sharp stuff when it's napped. But there were 10 or 12 rooms or shops where they, in this rather long building, divided up. You could, it had walls down one side and the other, and doorways in, but outside and inside those places, it was full of those chips. So there was a whole industry of people there who were making those obsidian tools, okay? Knives and scrapers and arrowheads and spear points and swords, and just all kinds of stuff. That was a specific function that those guys had to have. So they either had the abilities to do that or they didn't. If they didn't have the abilities to make the arrowheads, maybe they had the abilities to hunt, or maybe they had the abilities to grow food on the chimampas. Okay, those floating gardens.
Right, yes.
Because they had 9,000 hectares of floating gardens. That's a lot of beans and squash, baby.
Yeah.
Okay. There were guys that ran the tianguis. There were guys that flew on the top of the pyramids. Okay. These were people who were obviously had specific things that they did.
Right.
Okay. Well, they kind of had to be born into that in a way. They had to be able to do that from the early parts of their lives. They had to be able to demonstrate that ability. And the whole tribe had to understand and see that that's what they were doing.
Right. And then they would bring them up in a certain way yeah, so that could grow.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one of the reasons why family is important, why your community is important, because they're the people who know you. Okay.
Yep.
And you have to rely on them to tell you who you are. You can't tell them who you are because you can't see what you're looking with.
Yes, exactly.
You just can't. And so you're looking with your dreaming, or you're looking with your stalking. You can't see it until after it's all over. You can see it after the fact, but you can't see it while it's happening because you're busy using it.
Right. You're immersed. Yeah.
You're doing that right then.
Yep.
So how are you going to see it? You're busy thinking with it.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the point that I'm trying to make here is this, is that, stopping and considering that your specific function is determined at the beginning, at least, in a very practical way by the expression of the spirit in your life, or through your body, if you'd like, or through your programming, if you prefer. Any of those will work in terms of the practicality.
Yeah, right.
Because the idea is to think about the spirit in terms of practical terms, not in terms of spirituality.
Spiritual.
Yeah. Right.
That one, yeah.
Yeah.
Spiritual. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Because then you don't have your feet on the ground whatsoever. And it's like, how do you know? Again, go back to that lady. She's like, well, what's real? Well,
I'm sure that lady would say, just because you have that opinion doesn't mean that it's a real thing. I don't give a damn whether it's a real thing or not. Okay, what I'm asking you to do is to deal with it as if it were a practical thing. You can make it real as you want to. Reality is something that we can all adjust as we wish. Okay, but first of all, let's deal with the practicality of the spirit in our lives. Let's not make it a spiritual event where we lose the concepts of reality. Because I'm sure this nice lady is really considering herself to be a spiritual paragon of some variety.
possibly.
Okay, and I can't disagree with her about any of that. I don't know what a paragon is, but I don't have to agree with her. I mean, I can't disagree with her simply because I don't know. But I can see that she feels as though that she's fairly important and that her opinion is important, but nobody else's is. Well, that's not very practical. Who are you going to trust?
Right. Wow.
Well, let me put it a different way. Who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters. It's okay.
She's easy sometimes.
It's late. Anyway.
So does that cover it all for you then? All your questions?
Yeah, that wraps it up. And I'm sure, well, there's more, and I'm sure we're going to touch on a lot of this at some point again.
Probably so, yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of like a once over lightly kind of thing.
Right. It's like, well, as I've said before, it's like these ideas, you kind of like, ooh, wow, look at this. I got this. And then you take a few more steps and go, shit, man, this is way bigger than I thought. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So more to come.
Mm-hmm.
So let's wrap it up there.
Okay.
And thanks everyone for watching. And remember to hit that subscribe button. And also click that bell icon so that you stay up to date with our latest videos. We are now on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we're doing blogs now over on medium.com. All the links are down below. There's workshops and a lot more to come. So, just stay tuned and we'll keep you up to date. And remember to like, share, and comment. We'd love to hear from you. And so until next time.
Good night, all.
Good night.